Hello, everyone, and welcome to the fourth episode of the Circles of Trust podcast. I am Uriel5150, also known as Connor.
And I'm DV, also known as DV.
So today we're talking about, we're doing a little bit of everything. It's a bit of a retrospective on a title series that has carried a platform a very long way, built a bit of notoriety, infamy, and a wonderful catalog of rich storytelling environments and visceral gameplay. We're, of course, referring to the God of War series.
Yes.
To just preface it with, haven't been a huge fan of the series for the most part. Played a little bit of the first one, ended up catching a lot of the cutscenes for the later ones because I'm a big mythology buff. I like Greek mythology. I like the way they handled things in there. But the way it played, I was more of a Devil May Cry guy because I'm a weeaboo. So didn't really work for me so much.
That's fair.
But as time went on, the series evolved. And so with that evolution came my renewed interest in it, thanks to DV, who put me on the right track. So we're going to talk a little bit about the entire series, starting all the way from the beginning and its humble origins of God of War, and then all the way up to where we are now with God of War.
And then God of War Ragnarok.
And God of War Ragnarok, which is on the horizon.
Oh, Ragnarok.
I just think it's funny the whole entire series is bookended by God of War
and God of War. You gotta love reboots.
Yeah, well, it's not even a reboot.
A requel.
Oh, a requel, yeah.
A requel, more like it. So, God of War is very near and dear to my heart. So, I started playing God of War back in the PS2 days, like the very first one. And at the time, I had never seen anything like it. Like, the character was gruff. He didn't give a damn about anything. Like, he would, like, the enemies, like the bosses and stuff, were like full screen bosses. And you're like this little tiny dude, but you whooping ass the whole time. Loved it. So, we're going to start with the first God of War that came out in 2005 on the PS2.
Yes.
So my PS2, I still have it to this day, the exact same one that I had from launch. And I remember playing that game. That game took the PS2. I thought it took it to its limits because you could hear the disc like working overtime. And the first time that I saw Kratos like do anything, you know, like you see the opening cutscene. And then you start out, it's almost like the tutorial area where they show you, you know, you fight enemies, but they give you the basics. And I was like, I don't know if I'm going to like this. Because the camera was zoomed far out. Yeah. You know, it just, everything seemed small.
It felt very impersonal.
It did. Yeah. It did. But I understand why as I went through. Because the size of the enemies started to change.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow. Like the very first boss that I fought there. I think it was
it's the Hydra.
Yes.
Yep.
It's so huge.
It's massive because you're on a Grecian warship. Yeah. And then this Hydra, it's got a big head and then two smaller heads, and it's bigger than your ship.
It's bigger than the whole ship. So good.
In order to fight it, you have to climb up the crow's nests of these three different masts and attack it. And then in what was before then, like not really comprehended as being possible in video games, but some of the most brutal imagery, driving the broken masts through the eyes of the Hydra heads.
The quick time events, like they did them so well. Like we get quick time events now, but they're like, they're just excuses for the developers to just kind of do something quickly.
Right.
Like and get it over with.
For a lot of things, it feels like it's trying to keep the player engaged in things that run a little bit too long. Yes. So like, oh, this is your cutscene? Well, you need to hold L2 and move the left analog stick to open the door. Yeah. And it's like, but that's all I do. That doesn't do anything for me.
Yeah, that game to start off, like I'd never seen anything like that on the PS2 at the time. So that was really special. I think I've played through that game like just in the 2005, 2006 era, maybe 7 or 8 times. I would just play it, get it done, and then I would just restart it again. It was so much fun. Like the combat is the thing that brings me back to God of War. And then the story on top of it, because you watch all these movies and stuff that have the same type of mythology in it, but you never get to interact with it.
Yes,
like
being a part of the mythos rather than viewing the mythos.
Yes, and then you get to kill a lot of the gods. Oh God, it's so good.
Like
so
mythological
good.
creatures, and like you interact with a lot of the artifacts that show up in Greek mythology. As someone who just read a lot about Greek mythology at that point in my life, I think I would have been like 14. So yeah, in my teenage years, I was all about mythology, Norse mythology, Greek mythology, Japanese mythology, Chinese mythology, like the whole. I love mythos in general, but specifically Greek mythology was something that gets covered a lot. Got covered a lot in my school curriculum.
Yeah.
So after having just done a unit on Athens and, Crete and everything like that, and then opening up to, hey, you're on a Grecian warship and there's a Hydra. And I was like, okay, that's pretty tight. And they're like, now you're going to go to Athens and you're going to see the Oracle and she's got her titties out. And right. And I was like, oh, this is amazing. Games have never been this good. So like it was a bit mind blowing for me there. It slowed down a lot when it got out to the desert. Yeah. I think that's where I stopped playing and I let my friends play and I just kind of watched them.
I agree. It wasn't the early God of War games to me had pacing issues.
For sure. But that's also, it was a brand new IP.
Yes.
Like they were trying some stuff out. I don't begrudge them that. It's just like it wasn't for me. Games are, it's okay if a game isn't.
But believe it or not, well, you probably will believe it, each game had pacing issues. There's always a section that is the worst. Like you absolutely hate it. And sometimes that will prevent you from wanting to play it again.
Yeah. I don't know much about 2, but I think for 3, was it the maze?
The goddamn trials. It's like a section where you have trials and you have to pull these levers and then a bunch of shit and then you finish that off and you move up the little, oh God, it was the worst. I hated that section, but I played through that game and I've repurchased that game a million times, but we'll get to that. So yeah,
I was gonna say, just piggybacking off your note about God of War 1, the way that it opens, where you have this highly impersonal hero. Yep. He wasn't like winking at the camera being like, I'm the good guy, time to go save some people. He was like, hey, this captain's here and he's a fucking coward. Give me that key, bitch. Boom. And kicks him off into the gullet of the Hydra. Like,
you just feel so badass playing as Kratos in all of these games.
And then you get to plow concubines immediately after
mini games. Like they made them mini games like that. You just feel like a man when you play the game. And I also thought that graphics couldn't get any better than that.
It was very like stunning at the time.
Until we played God of War 2 in 2007. I don't know how they did it, but they improved everything in that game. God of War 2 is probably one of the better sequels, like as far as going from the original to the next one. They improved on a lot of stuff and the bosses and everything just got bigger and better.
Okay.
It isn't my favorite one. We'll get to all of that later, but that one was special to me because it looked better. And I think I played this one more than I played the first one because my friends, a lot of my friends would come over and they were like, hey, you got that God of War? Absolutely. And we would play it. And they were like, well, I can't get past this part. So I would play it for them. And I just ended up playing that thing a million times.
Hell yeah.
And I absolutely, just Kratos as a character, I think is really cool because he's a badass. And he's a badass because he's angry. And you rarely see that. It's at that point in time, you didn't see that a lot in games.
Right. It plays a lot into the meme of local man too angry to die.
Yeah.
That's basically Kratos in a nutshell.
Yes.
He's gone through a series of poor life decisions and is so mad at those decisions, the people that he feels forced him into those decisions, and himself, that he just does atrocity after atrocity after atrocity after atrocity and somehow keeps failing his way upwards.
He does. I mean, he's like the Disney writers. It's failing their way upwards. They get promoted every time they do some trash.
I was thinking the Star Trek writers personally.
Hey, they all
fucking Kurtzman.
they probably all just mesh together. They just a big blob, and they just
Big old
pull them out.
Katamari shit writing.
They just pull them out and say, I need you for this thing. But God of War 2 probably was my favorite sequel, like at the time, like up to that point. You know, you have other sequels of games, but they improved on things, but they didn't make it like that much better. They made God of War 2 so much better than all the others. Now, this list that I mainly have the console versions because there were PSP ones too.
Correct. That was Ghost of Sparta
and Chains of Olympus.
Chains of Olympus, both of which I heard were okay.
Yeah,
like most fine. PSP games, they were all right.
They were fine. They were just scaled down versions of the big boy systems.
Yeah,
which is fine. But God of War 2 definitely improved on a lot of the things. I think the combat got a lot better in it too. It's a little bit more fluid because, like you said, it was the first time they'd done anything like that. And then when they went to the second one, they perfected the combat.
Yeah,
the combat was so spicy. So much.
I think I did myself a disservice not trying to push through to 2 and then to 3, because I think I would have gotten a lot more out of it if I had done that. So. Because this is the same person who, after finishing Devil May Cry 1, was like, let's try Devil May Cry 2. And I 100%ed that game. And I regret it every day of my life because it was not a good game at all.
No.
And I'm thinking to myself, if I pushed through that had nothing that was there for me to enjoy, barely recognizable, I could have put in the work to go back and done War.
It surprises me that you didn't really play through those games. Like, they were fun. And you get to see like your favorite shit. Like, you get to see all the gods, man. You get to fight gods. Like,
yeah. Multiple.
So bad. You get to fight statues. You get to fight all types of crazy shit. Hydra. You get to fight all types of shit in those games. And I don't understand why you didn't play them. But that's okay.
Well, that's because I have shit taste.
So, next up was my favorite.
God of War 3.
God of War 3.
Yeah.
Good God.
A lot happens in that game.
From the very beginning.
Just from jump, there's a whole lot going on.
So
I don't know if we want to get into spoilers. I think we can do an overview and then we can double back on what specifically happens.
Yeah, that's perfectly fine.
It's hard to talk about 3 without talking about spoilers. What I was going to say.
So many good.
Because from jump, it's like, oh, okay.
It's so many good moments in that game. I will say that the combat was taking up another level, and they gave you multiple weapons to use.
Yes,
you gain like based on the people that you kill, you get a power from them.
Yeah.
God,
Devil May Cry did that first.
But I think they did it just like a little bit better. 3 was the pinnacle.
Devil May Cry didn't figure out the getting cool new weapon system until 3.
Yeah. Yep.
Like in 1 and in 2, it was just like, okay. Like, I'm still going to use Alistair. I'm still going to use, whatever. But then in 3, you're like, oh, I've got Cerberus nunchucks and I can like nunchuck my shotgun. Wow, I'm so hard right now.
I mean, that was pretty badass.
Yeah,
it was pretty badass.
But looking at the weapon lineup of 3 and how you get those pieces,
my God,
every attainment is so memorable. So I think they nailed the tone with that.
I like when you get to a certain point in the game when you have a bunch of different weapons and then they throw you in like arenas with multiple enemies that
you have to
switch and use the weapon. I think that is freaking genius. And I know other games have done it, yes, but other games don't contain Kratos.
True. And I would say a lot of games don't pull it off with a lot of polish. A lot of times it feels forced. It kind of kills your momentum. Famously and recently, Doom Eternal turned off a lot of people because Doom Eternal, going from Doom 2016 to Doom Eternal, Doom 2016 was pretty, I'm not going to say standard because it revolutionized how Doom was, but it was like, I'm going to get a weapon that I like, I'm going to get a lot of ammo for it, I'm going to use it, and then I switch to a secondary gun. The way that ammo works in Doom Eternal, you are switching weapons every 3-4 seconds because you have no ammo for anything. But you're incentivized to do that because switching between different weapons do different things to different enemies.
Okay, gotcha.
So it's a flow state thing where you hit it and you're like, okay, I see a Kako demon, I'm gonna shoot him with the sticky grenade. And I'm gonna like da, da, da. And like you flip through all of these different things, and you feel like a badass when you're doing it. Most games don't hit that momentum properly. I think God of War 3, I think it absolutely did.
It did. And with God of War 3, not only because they moved to a new system. So this was on PS3. And just from the opening cinematics and gameplay, the graphics on it, like they stepped all of that up. And it was first HD God of War.
Yeah.
And it was 720p though, but that's fine.
But at the time, that was
at the time it was great. And the frame rate was great. Like God of War 3 was definitely my favorite. It had so many of my favorite moments because of the bosses. The bosses in this game
had so much personality.
It's so good. It's so good.
And something we can double back on later. I think the representation of the gods' behaviors was the most true in 3. To how Greek mythology, we romanticize the gods, like as Americans looking back on it, like, oh, the gods were pieces of shit.
They were huge pieces of shit.
Almost every tale about a god was supposed to be a cautionary.
Yep.
So I really liked how they were portrayed in 3 because everyone, there was no good guys.
Nope, no good guys. So you didn't feel bad when you smoked one of them.
Yeah,
you didn't feel bad at all. Even what was the dude's name that you rip his head off and then you can use it to shine the light? What was
Hermes?
his name?
No, that's not Hermes.
No, Hermes is
Apollo.
Okay, because you fight him, you beat his shit in, and then you rip his head off, and then you carry it around, and you can use
the torch of Apollo or whatever. Yeah.
It's so,
and that's just one example of many from God of War.
Yes, like, are we going to talk about it, or are we going to save that for later?
We'll circle back to that. Right now, we're just taking the timeline of like first impressions.
That was my favorite one. Like,
and then we can circle back and be like, hey, here's all the dope shit that happened in this game.
Okay, so we talked about God of War 3 that came out in 2010 for the PS3, and it was also remastered on the PS4 in 2015, which I also purchased and played 30,000 times.
Do you notice a considerable improvement, like in terms of like graphical fidelity? And
it's a full 60 frames a second on PS4, the remastered one, and it's 1080p.
Nothing to be mad about there.
That's the best way to play God of War 3, the remaster. And they give you a few little extra modes and stuff, like challenge modes and stuff like that.
I was going to ask, are there like any quality of life improvements, like anything they streamlined or?
Yes. Just how they balanced how some of the weapons work, if that makes any sense. Because some of the weapons were some were too powerful, and some you just like, man, fuck this. I'm never going to use this weapon.
They balanced everything. Yes. So
now you would want to use it because it does do some cool shit. Like the the Chains of Hades.
Yeah.
Like I never wanted to use that in the original version. The remaster version, they made it so it hits more. Like the damage is a little bit more.
Okay.
And of course you can build it up, but I could take the gauntlets and I can lay 2 hits, 7 hits with the other thing. It's like
you can set up combos much easier with that.
Yes. So they made it so that
you were incentivized.
Everything was even. Like, of course, there were some things that were a little bit more powerful because they come from more powerful gods.
Right.
But you didn't shy away from using something because you're like, oh, that shit hits for like, I have to hit this enemy like 7 times to do the same damage as, hitting it with 2 with the other weapon. It's not like that. They kind of balanced it out. So I did enjoy that.
Okay.
So we have the God of War Origins collection. That came out in 2011 for
and
PS3.
That was 1, 2, and 3?
No, that came with Chains of Olympus and Ghosts of Sparta. They remastered them and put them on big consoles.
So you have played them?
I have that, yes. I didn't play them on the PS2.
Gotcha.
I had to wait all the way until they came out with them in 2011. So I bought that collection.
So awesome. What do you think of those two?
Those two remind me of the very first one. The reason I say it is because the very first one was not to the grand scale as 2 and 3 because it was the very first one.
Right.
And with the PSP versions, they're not as powerful, obviously, as a PS2 or a PS3. So they had to scale some of the things back. Like you don't have as many enemies on the screen, things like that. But for the remastered version, they added a few things back into it that they couldn't on the PSP version. So you do get areas where you got lots of enemies on the screen, so forth and so on. But you can tell the graphics really are the PSP version just upscaled, which is fine. It's fine. It looks like an HD PS2 game.
Right. And that makes sense.
And it's fine. The games are great. They're not as memorable as some of the other ones, like God of War 3 or even 2, but they continue the story, which is cool. So they add to the story versus just being a game.
Where do those two take place in the grand scheme of things?
I think, if I'm not mistaken, Chains of Olympus takes place in between 1 and 2, and I think Ghost of Sparta is between 2 and 3, the way they have them laid out, if I'm not mistaken.
I thought one of them was a prequel, like a pre-God of War 1.
They have a prequel. There was a mobile game, too. I forgot to put the mobile game on that list, which was lame. Because it's a mobile game.
Who blames you?
But I think...
Me. I blame you.
That's fine. You know what? I think...
Because I thought like... Chains of Olympus, I thought that was like a pre God of War 1 one.
They have, when you watch the story take place, they have things at the beginning, like before he became, before God of War 1, but then they also have things towards the end that allude to, I guess, like a little time jump. Okay. It's been a long time since I've played those two all the way through, so I'm going based on my horrible memory.
So it's not exactly a prequel, but there's material in there that references pre God of War 1 stuff.
Yes.
Okay.
And Chains of Olympus, Ghost of Sparta is definitely, you can tell that has no prequel stuff in it. He's already done a bunch of shit.
Okay.
And now he's doing more shit. But they know that people are going to play the mainline ones on the consoles more. So they just give you, it's just like filler episodes.
Okay.
Of a TV show.
So it's more of what you're asking for.
Absolutely. Okay. And I played through it and it was fine. It was fine. It wasn't to the level of some of the others, the main console ones, but
there's limitations there.
Right? Yeah, and it's not supposed to be. Just like the Uncharted games that were for the PSP.
Right.
They weren't supposed to take the place. They just added extra story elements.
Wasn't there a Vita exclusive as well? Uncharted?
Yep. And it looked great.
Yeah, it looked cool. I mean, the Vita was a cool system. I thought it was neat.
Nobody bought it, though. I'm not a big handheld person.
Neither am I.
Because I'd rather play it on
with arthritis. It's not great for me.
And just, I don't want to sit like this, looking at a small screen when I have a big TV to play on. And
you think I want to play on a goddamn no, just like a 32-inch curved monitor? No.
Yeah. So I don't know. All right. So those two, I played those two and I own those two. Then we moved to God of War Ascension in 2013. One of my least favorite ones.
Really?
Yeah.
Would you say it's your least favorite one?
Yeah.
Damn.
I would have to say that.
Where does it take place and why is it bad?
So I'll start with why is it bad?
Sure.
Because I have a lot of gripes about this game. So this particular game, I don't think they needed to make it is the main thing. Okay. You know how you get certain sequels in movies or whatever that just don't
accomplish nothing.
They don't accomplish anything.
Like Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness.
They don't accomplish.
I'm never gonna shut the fuck up about that. But yeah, no. So it's a pretty common thing with sequels in general that like they make something and they put a 2 at the end of it, and it's clear either it didn't need to get made or something went wrong.
Yep.
One of those two things. So this was more this didn't need to get made.
It didn't need to get made. Now. They were hyping. I remember this because I was Geek Squad at the time. Shout out to the Geek Squad. My homeboy and we were excited because they said they had multiplayer in it. And
I worked at GameStop when this was coming out, so they had the trailers on.
The way they made it look is that you could play co-op. Yeah. It made it look like you could play co-op. So we were like, "Oh my god, we have to get this game." So we get the game on day one.
Yep.
And it's multiplayer, but not co-op. Like, you don't play the game co-op.
Yep.
It was so disappointing. So that was strike number one. Strike number two is that you can tell they just reused assets from God of War 3. Now, I know lots of games reuse assets because obviously if it takes place in the same area, you will reuse assets. But it really felt like we were playing God of War 3 with a crappier story. And there are multiple sections in that game that are a pain in the ass to get through. There are two that I could think of right off the top of my head. There's a section in that damn game where you're on this it's almost like a bridge, but it's more like a circular. You're climbing up something. You're climbing up something to lead to something else, and it has these spinning things that you have to jump over or go around or jump over, and it's not a platformer.
So I think I know exactly what you're talking about. So it's like a bridge, but there's rotating circular pieces of terrain that you have to time your jumps.
And I'm going off.
That's a pretty
memory.
That's a pretty common like puzzle to have in games that aren't platformers but want to be. And I don't know why the fuck it happens.
They do that in a lot of the God of War ones. A lot of the annoying sections in most of those are you're climbing up something and things are falling, and then you have to jump here and then jump there. Those are always annoying. And God of War 3, I thought I was going to hate the sections where you're flying. You know, you get the wings and you're flying. Those aren't as bad.
Right. They
can be annoying, but they aren't nearly as bad. But that section, that shit is terrible. So you're climbing up these it's almost like ropes. It looks almost like, from my memory, it almost looks like the cables that hold up bridges, you know, and they have the like the Golden Gate Bridge and all that shit.
Suspension bridges.
So you're climbing up that shit. Things are rotating. You're trying to jump over it and move, and of course you're gonna fall because it's gonna hit you. When it hits you, you don't fly back. You fly to the side, obviously. So it hits you and you just fly off, and then you got to start all over. Annoying as hell.
That's trash.
And there's another section. The problem with this one is that the camera zooms out way too much. So you're in these cubes, and the cubes rotate, and you have to rotate along with them to jump to the next cube. So when they pull back so you can see the section that you jump into, but inside each cube, they're enemies. And sometimes you can't see the enemy because the camera zooms so far back, and Kratos and the enemies are like this fucking small. Pain in the ass.
That sucks.
And it's the only game that I did not want to play through again. I think I played through twice only because I wanted a specific achievement that I didn't get the first playthrough. And for a trophy. Sorry. Trophy. Sorry. Because I know Xbox dudes are like, we didn't play it in God of War.
We'll forgive you this once.
Yes, it's a trophy. So
okay.
Yeah, that game didn't need to be made. It didn't add anything to it. It didn't do anything good for the series. And the reviews were the lowest. I think they probably got the lowest reviews of most of the God of War games. Didn't like it. Didn't like it at all. It looked beautiful.
Even
but
lower
the gameplay was
than the newer God of War that had 0 nipples in it.
Yeah, it didn't have any nipples.
Not a goddamn nipple to be
seen. They had a bunch of I think they had one of the best mini games in God of War 3 when you go to Aphrodite's.
Yep.
Oh my god,
it's good.
Like that is
very good.
That's good stuff right there. That's good stuff. But yes, God of War Ascension, trash. Did not like it. It's the one black eye on an otherwise stellar catalog of games. So from God of War Ascension in 2013, we move all the way to God of War 2018. So that's that's it. Between that Ascension, because that's why they rebooted the series. I read a couple reviews and a couple interviews, and they were saying that after the reception of Ascension, they're like, we need to take this in a different direction because the audience is getting kind of leery on this series. They're like, we've seen this like 4 or 5 times.
They have kind of played it out.
Yeah. So that's why they made the change to what we have now. Before we start that, I want to tell everybody listening. So I know Connor did not like any of the God of War games. So I never talked about it with him. Never. Once I found out, he was like, yeah, don't really care. I played God of War 18. I bought the 2018. I bought the collector's edition, by the way, because I am a God of War shill. And that statue that comes with it
looks real nice.
Something special. And the little map that comes with it. And
you can't see it. My favorite statue I have is the Witcher 3 one with Geralt and the Griffin. Just,
stuff like that is amazing. So, God of War 2018 was very special to me because that was the first game that I bought a collector's edition for in a long time. Like I have Soul Calibur, I buy all their collector's editions, right. But as far as like adventure games or action games, I usually don't. I usually just get the standard edition. But this one,
because if you do, then the guy at GameStop is going to tell you that you
I need to buy. Yeah, I need to buy another one,
different franchise because you don't know what good games are.
Yes, I'll have to tell you that story too. It's kind of funny, but with God of War at that time, I had just gotten divorced, so I was in my new apartment, and I was like, you know what? I want to splurge and I want to buy something for myself because I haven't done anything for myself in a long time. So I paid, I think that was $150 for that particular one.
Sounds about right.
And because you can get the standard edition, the deluxe, and then you get the big collector's edition. It's a huge ass box. When I opened that thing up and I saw the way they looked, I almost cried, man. I think it's a thing of beauty. So going into the game, when I played it, I was like, you know what? Connor would like this because of the style. And they changed the whole thing up. It's not the same. It's behind the shoulder. It's, you have an axe. You don't be jumping around. You don't do all these crazy in the air combos. It's a grown man with a fucking beard. He's a badass. Yes. So just tell him how you felt when you played that.
DV hit me up and he was like, hey, the new God of War game just released and you're going to love it. And I said, no, I won't. I don't like God of War games. And you know this because we've talked about it. And he was like, no, he's like, trust me, I'll bring it over. I'll let you play it and you'll see what I'm talking about. He brings it over. He installs it. I play it and I get smoked by the first enemy. I just die outright. And I'm like, this feels bad. And then I go back and I get killed again. And I'm like, okay, what am I missing? And then I go back for the third time and I realize I'm still trying to play this like it's God of War 1, where it's hit, 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 other hit. There's not a lot of blocking. There's dodging, but there's like just hitting. You're flurrying the enemies up and down. So then I was like, okay, well, let's pay attention to the block button. And then I realized if you time the block correctly, you do a parry. And I was like, oh, this is just Dark Souls. This is just Dark Souls God of War. And it like clicked for me. I was like, okay, like combat is not going to be me always on the offensive. There's going to be a give and a take. There's going to be correct timings. Like there's going to be a lot to take into account here. I think I played for like 3-4 hours, something like that. And then I was like, man, that's really good. I was like, I'm going to wait for this to go on sale.
Yep, that's exactly what you said, dude.
I'm going to wait for this to go on sale. I'll get it when it drops a couple bucks. I really appreciate you giving me this chance. I did not stop thinking about that game the entire night. And the first thing I did when I woke up the next day, I went into Best Buy and I bought a copy at full fucking price. And then I took it home and I played the dog shit out of that game. I 100% of that game in 3-4 days. It didn't take super long because I just played that.
Yep.
It might have been a week. Maybe it took me a week, but I was like, everything about that game felt good. Once I got past my mental block of like, I went in like slouching and like, oh, this is just gonna be another button masher, and then I got my shit clapped, and I was like, okay, no, like this is much more than a simple hack and slash. This is a tactical third person melee extravaganza.
Yeah, I knew it wasn't going to be a button masher when your attack button was was one of the bumpers.
Yeah.
I knew it. I was like, because, you know, they usually have the face buttons as attack on the old God of War. Because I went into it playing, you know, I'm like, oh, this is going to be like the old God of War, just a different perspective. No. When I saw that you had to use one of the bumpers, I was like, okay, I got to get that out of my head. It's totally different. It's totally different feel to it. It's amazing.
And it really is.
It is.
And yeah, I played the hell out of it. And then DV brought it. I went over to your house or you came over to mine.
I came over here.
Oh, yeah. And you had your PS4 and you're like, yeah, I'm fighting some of the Valkyries. And then I just went and killed all the fucking Valkyries.
So this son bitch right here. I'm like, yo, I killed one of them.
You did.
I had one of them down and I said, yo, I'm struggling with these Valkyries. And you said, let me give this shit a try. So this dude grabs my controller and he goes in and then he kills that one. It took him a couple tries because, you know, you have to get the patterns and everything down. He killed that one. Then he said, where's these other bitches? I'm killing all these bitches today. I was like, I don't know. Like, I want to. I said, you know what?
I want to do.
I said, that's fine. Go ahead. That chill session that we had, he killed all of the Valkyrie. He went through and mopped up the rest of them. I could not go home without him killing all of the Valkyrie. That's how he did this shit. But it's funny that we talk about this because the same thing happened with my boy Wildebeest.
Yep.
The exact same thing. He hated the God of War games. He was like, oh, they're just Sony trash. He was definitely an Xbox dude at the time. So anything Sony did
has a lot to do with other things. Just saying, certain problems you see on one console, you don't see on the other.
He absolutely hated most things that were Sony. So when that game came out, I said, Will, we're going to play this game. You're gonna like this game because it's not like the other ones. He was like, no, I'm not gonna like it. So I bought it over and he played it on his regular PS4 and he ended up buying a PS4 Pro after playing that game because he just showed me something really messed up. Really messed up. But it could be true. So he played that game. He went through it. And he's like, okay, you were right. So everybody that I've introduced to that game that hated the OG God of War games ended up loving this game. Like the story, the graphics, the gameplay, everything was amazing. But I don't think... Well, you might, because you watched a lot of the games play out beforehand. So you see some of the references that they made there. He didn't necessarily care about God of War at all. So when certain moments would happen and I would tell him,
understand the significance of it.
I'm like, bro, did you see? He was like, yeah. I'm like, you don't get it. Because there's some moments that I was geeking the fuck out.
Even for me, because basically that day that you had me play God of War, after you left, I watched all the cutscenes on YouTube. I watched all the cutscenes for 1, 2, and 3 back to back to back. It was like 5 or 6 hours of cutscenes. And that's why I was like hyping myself. I was like, I gotta play. And so then when I went into God of War, it was like I had just finished playing all 3 games back to back. So I was like, I'm fresh on the story. I know where we're at. And then I'm like, what's going on here? What's going on? And then like certain beats happen. And I'm like, oh my God.
Yes. That game is so good, but there is one section that I hate.
There's one section that everyone should hate.
God,
starts with an N.
Oh, it is the absolute worst section. Why did they make the mist hurt you? Why is it poison mist? Like, why do we have to go through poison?
Not just that. Why do they make it so you have to build new gear?
Yeah, just to go through that section.
Items and use resources to upgrade your armor to survive longer so you can just do the mist more. There's not like a pinnacle. It's just like, oh, I've ran this gauntlet enough times to be able to unlock all the tears and I'm done with this fucking realm forever.
It's so terrible.
And they make you find a Valkyrie in that shit.
I know. I've watched you play that.
That's true. You did watch me do that. God of War 2018. fantastic.
Yep.
Top to bottom, it still stands as like one of my favorite single player experiences I've ever had.
He said.
I because what it did is it reminded me of a time where single player games could be about story. It could be about telling a story and having a theme and like not having it be beaten over the head with it. It's just, this is what the story is, and what you take away from it is what you take away from it.
And it's so simple. They just went to spread the ashes. They just went on a journey to spread the ashes.
Such a simple premise. And it's like, they go to spread the ashes and then things went wrong.
Things went crazy wrong. And I love it.
It's funny because Final Fantasy, this reminds me of two different things. First, Final Fantasy 15, the premise for that game is also incredibly simple. You and your 3 bodyguards are going to a port to catch a ship to go to your arranged wedding. That's how the game opens. So that happens, and then everything goes wrong at the same time.
Yes.
Which I like that concept. You have a camaraderie that's built through that.
Absolutely.
And God of War 2018 handles that beautifully, because first it's just 2 people, and then you have a third wheel of sorts that adds a whole new dimension to that dynamic.
And what's cool about that is that third person that's added, he's carried ones like that before. So
it's not new to him.
It's a callback. Like he was not freaked out. He's just like, well, I mean, I've done this before. I've had to use severed heads for many things before. Bowling balls, whatever the fuck I wanted to do.
Yeah.
So yes, that game is near perfection. I think that realm is the only thing that knocks it down just a little bit. It's so annoying to me.
Honestly, Muspelheim isn't great either.
Yeah, it's not.
Because it's just like it could have just been an arena.
Yeah,
it could have just been an arena. You didn't have to do all the fucking climbing in between the different arenas. It could have just been an arena that changed shape based on what trial you were in. I don't think that would have been hard to do.
I agree. That's a good point.
And the fact that once you beat it, you then have to go back through and do the perfect level challenges is... Honestly, it's just the first one. It's just the first challenge is bullshit, because you have to kill all the enemies without getting hit once.
Yep.
And the enemies that throw at you are not ones that are fun to dodge. But I've done it. I've done it 3 times.
That game just is something special, man.
So for me, normally when I get a game on a console, it'll stay on console. I'll play the game on console. That's it. That's my experience with it. God of War 2018 was so good that the second I heard it got a PC release, like the PC release was coming up, I was like, I'm putting aside money to get this the day it comes out. And I did. And I streamed the whole thing. I went through start to finish, and playing it through a second time was so much more satisfying, just in terms of like how badass I look, because it looks like I know how to do everything that I'm doing. Because the God of War 2018 is much more of an RPG than any of the previous titles were.
100%.
It's 100%. Much more like gear focused and how you build your stats out that way.
And getting your runes
just right.
That I didn't realize how important that shit was to do. Like getting that stat by itself, built up. It makes a big difference.
Yeah, literally, you don't have to play the game anymore if you get your runic all the way up. You get your runic and your cooldown, and you're set. Yep. Because then you're just alternating between your 4 different attacks over and over. Which is what I do. That's how I play the game. And that's how you kill the Valkyries, because fuck those hoes.
Yeah.
But
they ain't loyal.
Yeah, so that's kind of the timeline, generally speaking, of God of War to God of War. But now we're going to talk about the actual events of the games and go more into the how we got here and where do we go from here.
Yes.
So spoiler warning, if you want to play into the God of War games, I recommend going and playing them. Even the earlier ones that I didn't play myself, I still recommend you play them because people vouch for them. They're highly acclaimed. Just because good. I didn't like them doesn't mean you won't like them. But if you play nothing else, please play God of War 2018 because it's a fucking masterpiece.
It is a masterpiece. Everything about it is.
I do not say that lightly because I have a pretty high bar for what I consider to be like a great game. God of War 2018 is a great game.
Yes. Yes, it is. So I wanted to talk about, like, God of War 1 and 2. It's fine. They have moments. But God of War.
Well, I think God of War 1 and 2, the moments are important to talk about for how we got to God of War 3.
Okay, that's fair.
Specifically, just that who Kratos is.
That's fair.
Why his struggle is important, and then what happens at the end of 1 that precipitates 2.
That's
and
fair.
then how we get to where we are. So, in God of War 1, you play as Kratos. People refer to him as the ghost of Sparta. Mm-hmm. It's not super clear at first why that is. But he's a very, like, pale, almost albino man in a land of, people with Mediterranean complexion. So he stands out like a sore thumb. That and his gigantic red, like, spiral tattoo thing going on. You find out that Kratos, he was a great warrior from Sparta. And while on the battlefield, he was about to be struck down, and he basically made a deal, not with the devil, but with the god of war himself. And he said, Ares, if you spare me. Ares! And so he basically says, if you spare me in this moment, I swear I will dedicate the rest of my life to serving you. And Ares is like, this guy's a pretty good warrior. So he comes down and he honors that end of the bargain. He saves his life. But then he turns Kratos into a mindless killing machine because Ares is the god of war, and what he thrives on most is chaos.
Yep.
So he turns Kratos into his embodiment of war on Earth, so much so that Kratos goes and, in a blind rage, kills his own wife and child. And I believe he was cursed by a sage in that same town, which is what causes the ashes of his wife and his child to be stuck to him forever.
Yep.
So
that gives him the look.
His white complexion is actually the ashes of his dead wife and child forever burned onto his body, which is pretty goddamn metal.
That is.
So with that event, that's basically what happens right before God of War 1 opens. And Kratos is an agent of the gods. He gets directed by Athena to go do things. And specifically, she's like, hey, Ares is kind of a cunt and he's fucking up Athens, and I really like Athens, so, like, fix that for me. So your objective in the entirety of God of War 1 is dunk on Ares, which is both the mission the gods have given you and what Kratos actually wants to do.
So, of course, he takes that and runs with it.
Yes.
Like, he rips through
everyone who gets in his way.
I think the first, that was the first God of War that had the, you fight the statue. It's like a...
Which statue?
It's a statue of a woman, and I remember the hands coming down, and you have to hit the hands when they come down. I think
was that in the desert?
Yeah, it was in the desert. I think that is God of War 1. They all the bosses run together except 3. Three was the only one when they kind of separate and go, because you can mix the two together.
There's the Hydra. Yeah. Then there's everything else, and then there's 3.
Yeah.
I mean, that's all I
remember. Boss fight of the Hydra on the ship was amazing.
It set the tone perfectly. I don't think there could have been a better opening for that game. So, spoiler alert, we get to the end of God of War 1. You end up 1v1ing Ares. You get imbued with the power of the gods. You kill Ares, and Kratos attempts to kill himself because he is filled with the shame of having killed his wife and child, throws himself from the heights of Mount Olympus, and then Athena's like, haha, bitch, you thought. Anyways, you're the new God of War. And he's like, I didn't want this. I hate the gods. So that's where God of War 1 ends. God of War 2 opens. You are Kratos, the God of War. And you're in Athens fucking shit up because that's what you were a Spartan. Sparta and Athens traditionally did not get along. So you're there fucking their shit up. And all of a sudden, Zeus is like, man, wouldn't it be really cool if you just died, like, right now, and he kills you, or almost kills you. And he strips away your godhood, or he affects it in some way.
Yeah, he strips it away, so he's back.
Is it with the sword? Is the sword the important thing?
Yeah, he stabs him with it and all that. So now Kratos is
back to being a god, but even as a man, he killed a god. So that doesn't really stop him.
Such a bad. And I'm trying to think of a memorable God of War 2 boss. Like, I can't think of one right. Like, I feel like I'm going to mix
2 and 3 up.
Well, no, 3 is, you can definitely tell because you fight individual gods there. But in 2, I can't pull one of the memorable bosses, because the Hydra was the most memorable one in the first game. Can't pull
nothing comes to mind when I think about it.
The gameplay was improved, the graphics were improved,
but the bosses weren't standouts.
They weren't standouts. And
so, long story short,
that sucks.
We'll kind of move through God of War 2 really quick here, but you swear vengeance on Zeus, you go to kill Zeus, and then the game ends on a cliffhanger where you are like, I'm going to storm Mount Olympus and kill every motherfucking god that I see.
Yep.
God of War 3 opens up. You're storming up Mount Olympus and you're killing every motherfucking god you see.
So, one thing about God of War 3, like when this game opens, it is balls to the wall right from jump. Like, you don't get a moment to get the controls together. You don't think about anything. You're on one of the Titans climbing up the joint.
On Gaia, right?
You're on Gaia, yes. You're climbing up. And you're like a little speck on her, and you're talking to her. She's talking shit to you. It is so good. And that theme, Kratos being small on large people, that theme is throughout the entire game.
Yep. And
not only do you get to kill Titans, you also get to kill like the gods. You fight the actual gods in this one.
You kill Hermes.
Yep.
You take his boots.
His shit is brutal.
Yeah.
His shit is so brutal. And Hermes is not like big and buff like Hercules or anything. He's like a scrawny regular dude.
Talking about mythology and who these gods are is what I love. So Hermes was the god of communication. Basically, he was considered to be the messenger of the gods. It's debated in some circles whether he was actually a god or if he was just close enough to them because of his messenger capacity. But in any case, famously, Hermes is always depicted as running very quickly and being quick as the wind. So Kratos takes his goddamn legs off.
Yes.
Fully just
rips them shits off.
Pulls his goddamn legs off, which is brutal.
And all the boss fights in that particular game are fun.
Yes, they all look like they have very good theming. There's multiple stages, there's crescendos.
It's so much fun. And when you get those, you get the ability to, it's almost like a speed boost.
It's like a dash?
Yeah, it's your running speed, because there's certain sections you need to run fast.
Gotcha. So it's like a sprint.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you can hop over shit.
Gotcha.
And
which is a fitting thing to get from the god of speed.
It's so much fun. So much fun. And we fight Hercules.
Yes.
That is one of my favorite fights.
It's an amazing fight, just how it's set up. And again, the thing that I like so much about 3 is the accurate depictions of the gods. If you've watched Disney Hercules, that's not the whole picture. Hercules, in the mythology as the Greeks transcribed it or orated it, I guess, was a fucking asshole.
Straight asshole.
Because he killed his wife and didn't have a whole redemption fury arc like Kratos did. He just killed his wife and he was like, damn, guess I gotta go get some more whores. He was a motherfucker to the core. And the thing about Hercules is his stories are meant to tell the downfalls of the sin of pride. That's what he's a monument to. Hercules is pride personified. So when you fight him, he's immediately talking shit to you.
Talking so much shit.
Which he thinks he's entitled to, but he's like, Zeus is my father, so I'm better than you. I'm looking down my nose at you, not realizing that Kratos' dad is also Zeus.
Yep.
So this isn't just some schmuck. This is his half brother, and also a demigod in the same capacity. So it's an even fight, even though it doesn't look like it, because Hercules is gargantuan compared to Kratos.
And I'm glad they did that.
Yes.
I'm glad they made him bigger, because he's supposed to be freaking huge.
Yes,
and he wears these badass gauntlets.
The lion heads.
And so I love the sound that it makes when they make contact. But that boss fight is awesome because, of course, it has multiple stages, but he also has people there cheering him on because that's who he is. They're just basic villain, you know,
Yeah.
the beat 'em up guys that you have. You just find them all over the maps. But it's a bunch of them there, and they don't come out to you immediately. They stand back and let him do his thing.
Yep.
When you get the best of them, that's when he sends them in, and it just shows like how much of an asshole he really is.
Yep.
It's so good.
And it
So
felt
good.
very on brand. So
good.
when you finally kill Hercules after this grueling combat, you don't just kill him.
Oh, you
brutalize him.
you fucking shit up. So much so that it like you crash through the thing and it's like a pit of water at the bottom.
It's like a grotto.
Yes, and you're down there, and of course you need to go get the gauntlets.
Yep.
But when you go underwater, you see his mangled body down there, and you can like look at it, and it's like jaws all broken, and he's all mangled. And then you get the gauntlets, and then you were just like, at first I was like, I don't know if I like these, but as you use them and you power them up, 2 or 3 hits just wreck shit. It's so good. But not all enemies can be hurt by those gauntlets. Like there's certain ones that can block it, and you need to use a different weapon.
Right.
But it's great. So we fought.
So after you kill Hercules, then you go upstairs and you find Hera, who famously not a fan of Hercules because Hercules is the product of an affair between Zeus and a mortal. So Hera's like, "Oh, you stupid bitch," and she's sitting there like sipping her wine.
Yeah, drunk as a bitch.
Like, fucking Kratos, you dumb bitch. Oh, you father doesn't love you just like you didn't love that guy. Anyways, fuck you, Kratos. And so Kratos is like, "Hey, I've killed enough gods for today. I'm gonna let you be, but you need to figure your shit out."
Yep.
And so he turns to leave. And Hera, being the drunken asshole that she is like, "Go find your little whore Pandora." And Kratos goes and turns around, fucking just gets her neck like a chicken bone, fucking kills her. And that shit was pretty cool.
It's so good. It's so good. It's, man.
It's funny because it shows even at that stage, Kratos had lines that he was reticent to cross, but would cross them.
He would cross them if he had
pushed.
to. If he had to, he would cross them. So we also there's another fight with Hades. You get to fight Hades.
Yes. I don't know much about that fight, honestly. I didn't really see that one.
So that fight takes place in Hades.
Yeah.
So he's like, he's like in the background. And of course, it's one of the you have to hit him at long range.
Is it in 3 that you see Sisyphus and Prometheus?
Yes.
That's in 3?
Yeah.
Okay.
So that fight is pretty awesome. And from a graphical standpoint, it's probably one of the best looking. The fight with what was the shit in the very beginning? The horse, the water horse is like the very first boss that you fight. Like you go straight to a boss fight. You climb up the thing, you get there, and it's like the big water horse. What the hell? Who the hell was that? Was that Poseidon?
Yeah, Poseidon.
So you fight Poseidon at the very beginning, and from the beginning you just realize that this is not like the standard God of War. Like they up the ante. And when you fight Hades, you're in a pit, and of course he has minions that come out to get you, and you hit him from long range. But the look and the sound and everything is just so good. And then you get his weapon when you beat him. And those weapons, they're long range, they're super long range. And the more you build them up, they can get longer. But they don't do as much damage. Like I said, on the remaster,
they kind of bumped it up a little bit.
They bumped it up a little bit because I hated using those because they didn't really do anything. But they do damage against certain enemies, but those enemies don't show up very often. So Hades is another one that you fight. Let's see, who else do you fight in there? Oh, the Kronos.
Yes. So Kronos, in Greek mythology, Kronos is the father of Hades, Poseidon, and Zeus. He basically got it into his head that the only way to keep his children from killing him would be to eat them. So he ate a bunch of his kids, and then they banded together and broke out of him. And then they locked him away forever because they were like, this is the embodiment of time. We can't really fuck with him like that. Kratos has an entirely different opinion on the matter.
So you fight on him.
Yes.
Like you are.
His body is the arena.
Yes, you are minuscule on his body, and you fight enemies on there. You fight these little like almost like bumps and warts and shit on him. You burst those things open.
You tear off his fingernails.
You tear off his fingernails. And that is probably one of the coolest fights just because of the scale.
Conceptually, it's fantastic.
It is excellent. And that's why God of War 3 was my favorite one up until 2018 came out. It had everything you could ever want in an action adventure game.
Just a ton of spectacle and satisfying fights and interesting mechanics.
And the story was pretty good. Like
fantastic.
You know, the story. So after you fight Kronos and you talk to Hephaestus in the like it's like almost like a little hub that you go to, and you can go in different directions. Aphrodite's place is over on the right. And Aphrodite's, oh man, you
do not kill Aphrodite, the goddess of love. You just fuck the shit out of her and all of her nymphs.
They're watching like the mini takes place, and the camera zooms on them.
And so there's like two of them at the door, and then they start like coming in single file. Like there's like a new one every like 2 seconds.
And you have to. There is a button combinations you have to do. They show up on the screen. And you have to hit the correct button combinations, which makes Kratos do his thing on there. The bed vibrates, the screen vibrates, and the lady is like, "Oh, I wish that was me." Oh, it's hilarious. So good. It's probably because I knew they were going to change that in 2018. I knew they weren't going to go that route, which is fine because it fits the story. Because he can do that with Atreus.
No, but it definitely fit the arc of where Kratos was at that time.
Yes.
He was like, my wife and kid are dead. I'm here killing shit. I don't know when I'm gonna go and do anything. Fuck it. Get some cash.
It's so good. Like God of War 3. If you like the old school style God of War, that is the definitive game.
Definitely.
It didn't have too many things that sucked. There was a one section that wasn't very good. I mean,
it was part of the labyrinth, right?
Yeah, it's not terrible, but it's
tedious.
Yeah, it's very tedious. So that was my favorite. That's my number 2 right now. 2018 is definitely taking it. Everything about 2018 is fantastic.
2018 is just so. As far as where the story goes, for God of War 3, dealing with Hephaestus, you find out that Pandora's locked up.
Mm-hmm.
You make it your mission to go release Pandora because you want to open the box, I'm assuming.
Yes.
And Hephaestus helps you up to a point and then betrays you.
Yeah.
He forges Hades chains for you, and then he turns on you, and you kill Hephaestus with his own hammer, I think.
Yep, you do.
Yeah.
It's a quick time event.
Now, so in the pantheon of Greek mythology, Hephaestus is the god of the forge, the god of like creation, basically. But he's also famously like horribly misshapen and deformed, ugly beyond normal mortal comprehension. And he had an arranged marriage to Aphrodite, the goddess of love and beauty. And so canonically, Aphrodite cheats on him nonstop. First it was with Ares, and then now with Kratos.
Yep, and the really messed up thing is her room is right next there to where he is.
So he absolutely heard.
He heard all
everything.
Of that, and he sees you walk out of her place. It's so dirty.
Yeah,
it's so dirty. But you know that's how it was back in those days.
Well, the gods, and again, they are meant to be cautionary tales. You should not emulate the behavior of the gods. They exist as a notion of the depths of mortal depravity. Yep. Because if people were made in the image of gods, then the image of gods must be very twisted indeed. Yes. It's kind of how Greek mythology frames everything. So you get Pandora, you go through the labyrinth, which sucks ass. You open up the box. Something bad happens to Pandora with that, I think.
Yes.
Something happens to her.
It's foggy, but
bad things happen to Pandora, and then Zeus shows up.
Yes.
And Zeus is like, hey, you stupid motherfucker, were you looking for me? You killed all my brothers and my children and, oh, I don't know, everyone in this goddamn mountain.
Yep.
So you end up in a 1v1 against Zeus.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of the fight. Like the fight.
The fight itself is bad. The conclusion
is pretty good.
Because you start punching the shit out of Zeus, and then the camera locks like from Zeus's perspective,
and you just
see yourself punching the camera like nonstop and
you can go as long as you want.
Yeah.
It does, like when you stop, that's when the cutscene continues. But you can go forever if you just see more blood spewing out. Is so good.
So you end up killing your father because, as previously established, Zeus is Kratos' father. I think that was revealed in 2.
Yes.
And then you take the god-killing sword, and Athena shows up.
I think she does. Yeah, she shows up in like
her like celestial projection form.
Yep.
And then does Kratos kill himself with the sword?
And then they show him laying on the ground.
And then later they show the blood trail.
And he's gone. So we're like, yeah, baby.
So God of War 3 basically ends with Kratos trying to break the cycle of the Grecian pantheon.
Yeah.
Because he saw the depravity that they engaged in, and he removed all the gods that he could access. And then he himself, being a member of the pantheon, attempted to remove himself.
Yes.
And he succeeded, but he still survived as a mortal. Though he could never truly be a mortal after the things that he had done.
No.
So yeah, it ends with a blood trail going down the side of the mountain, and then
we're gonna skip Ascension because Ascension
is dog water.
Yeah, they don't even continue most of that stuff in 2018. Like they don't even,
and nothing really
mention
momentous happens in Chain of Olympus or Ghost of Sparta. So just things happened there, but no like major story plot points. But then we cut all the way to God of War 2018. And the game opens with Kratos chopping down a tree with an axe.
And it looks beautiful.
It looks outrageous.
God almighty, that opening scene. I played it on a PlayStation 4 Pro. So I chose the frame rate mode. So it was 1080p. But it was HDR. It was 60 frames a second. Well, tried to get 60 frames a second.
So I played it on a normal PS4, and I thought it looked amazing. And then I played it on my PC when it came out for that. And yeah, damn. It looks so good. So the story opens. There's no like preamble cutscene. There's no like, this is where Kratos has been. It's just Kratos opens up. He chops down a tree. He picks up the tree, and he's joined by a little boy. And he's carrying this massive tree on his shoulder, and the little boy is talking, and they're talking about a woman, and the kid's talking about his mom, and They take this tree back to their shared house, and there's a female form on a funeral pyre, and he adds that last log to the funeral pyre, and he sets the lady on fire, and it's revealed that is Kratos' wife. He took a wife and sired a son, and the son is the young man that you see next to you, Atreus. Faye, your wife, her final wishes were for you to carry her ashes and dump them from the tallest point in all the realms. Yep. Was her very specific wording.
Yep.
So Kratos and Atreus, not knowing much about the realms beyond Midgard, which is where they are, though that doesn't really get explained until later, they're like, hey, it's that gigantic mountain way off in the distance that we can see from our house. That has to be the highest point because nothing else is visible.
Yeah, we don't
That's the highest point. Kratos takes his son Atreus out into the woods to teach him, or rather refine his skills in hunting, because Kratos needs to know that his son is ready to go out into the world because he knows how dangerous it is out there. And while they're hunting, Atreus fucks up. He misses his shot. He's very impulsive because he's like 7.
Yeah, he's pretty damn young.
He might be like 9 or 10, but like for real, he's a tiny child. But yeah, he misses his shot on the elk. Elk gets away, and Kratos is like, "You stupid boy, you're not ready for this, boy." And then he takes his bow away from him, and they go home. And while they're inside, there's a knock on the door. He's like, hey, hide in the basement and Atreus is like, you told me to never go in the basement.
Yep,
and he's like, get in there now. And he opens up the door, and at the door, there is a scrawny Nordic man with braided mustache and beard covered in blue runes and tattoos.
Like he probably had a couple 24 packs before he got there. Like he looks like he get tossed back.
He looks like he just stumbled out of every trailer in West Virginia. Like he's on a bender to end benders.
Man.
But yeah, he shows up in very menacingly. He's like, hey, he asks him something, and Kratos is like, hey, you need to leave. And the stranger winds up and punches Kratos in the face. And Kratos, he takes it, but he's like, all right, I'm losing my patience. You need to go.
Yep.
And so the guy winds up to hit him again. Kratos grabs it, throws the guy like a rag doll, and then ensues this massive, like Dragon Ball Z-esque fight where they're smashing through the house and rocks, and they're throwing like pieces of mountain on each other. And it's an amazing sequence back and forth.
And you get to play it. Like,
yes.
You play.
Most of that sequence is you are at the helm.
Yes. It's not just a cutscene or a quick time event. You get to play a lot of it. And it is a scripted scene. So you get to a certain point. You inflict enough damage.
And it starts the next set piece. And then you advance the fight.
But it is so good.
It does an effective job of showing you how boss fights like that work. Where there's multiple phases, there's multiple stages. How to conserve your health through phases, and most importantly at the very end, how to activate Spartan Rage and what that does. Because when you're fighting, the stranger looks and he can see through the roof of your house because you've broken through it, and he's like, if you're by yourself, why are there two beds? And then Kratos freaks out and he throws him away. Kratos drives him through a wall with a tree, and while the stranger's in there, seemingly unharmed, he goes, hey, when I'm done with you, I'm going to go inside that house and I'm going to do bad things to whoever's in there. And Kratos loses it in his traditional old Spartan way. And he activates his Spartan Rage, which puts him into a state of fury. His fists turn on fire and he just punches the fucking shit out of this stranger.
So satisfying.
The confrontation ends with Kratos dropping a piece of rock on him so large that it splits the earth. It starts like a tectonic fissure where that rock dropped. And then Kratos walks over and he snaps the man's neck. The man falls dead and he tosses him into a crevasse. And then he goes and collects his son. He's like, change of plans, kid. We're leaving town. And that's how the game kicks off. It does an excellent job of setting up the stakes. Your objective has been made incredibly simple. But the looming threat of enemies beyond your knowledge, beyond your scope to deal with effectively, just present themselves. And you, to the best of your knowledge, have given no offense. You've caused no harm. You've done nothing to provoke this attack. I'm not going to go beat by beat, but I think it's important to like show where it starts up from there. But basically, along the way, you find Brock and Sindri, who are two dwarven brothers, smiths. One is a foul-mouthed, silver-poisoned dwarf who cusses about everything and is just generally
so awesome.
He's an ornery sumbitch, as we would call him. And the other brother is a delicate, OCD-driven germaphobe, but also a master. I mean, they're both master craftsmen. But they are like. There's clearly a fissure between the two of them. They both say as much. But the axe that Kratos is wielding is called Leviathan, and it was given to him by Faye. And when you have it, one of the craftsmen looks at the axe and says, hey, I made that. And you're like, what? And so he's like, hey, look at it. Like, it has my mark on it. If you look on the bottom, I can show you I've got half that brand right here. So then these guys become your upgrade hub. Whenever you need to upgrade your weapons, whenever you need to upgrade your armor, you can buy stuff from them. They and they have a means of teleporting in between realms. So they're wherever you are. They can be where you need to be. It becomes very apparent very quickly that there's something wrong with Atreus. Even from that first encounter back in the Grove when you were collecting things for your mother or for your dead wife, his mother. He has a moment where he freaks out and he stabs the shit out of a dead ogre. And while he's doing that, he starts coughing and hacking and like sounds sick. And you don't have a lot of context for that, but Kratos makes it seem like this is something that's normal. Like he's like this all the time.
Like, oh
So
man.
you're like, huh, like that's kind of weird. Like it's like he's having asthma attacks or something. Like, it doesn't make a lot of sense. So you move on and you giving Atreus a second chance to prove himself hunting. So you come across this boar that's in the woods, and Atreus, you know, following your every command to the letter, draws his arrow, knocks it, releases, hits the boar. The boar is wounded and runs off into like a misty labyrinth. You run after because Atreus gave chase without letting you know, so he's always been by your side. Now he's off in the fog somewhere and you can't see him. And the game does a great job of just making you panic for a moment, because
it does.
Sounds coming from everywhere. You can barely see anything, and Kratos' voice actor, I feel bad I don't know his name, but he was an actor in Stargate.
Yes.
Fantastic voice work in this game. He lends so much power to that voice and makes it a believable emotion for this man who you've seen murder gods to be afraid for his son.
Yeah, I enjoyed actually both voice actors that did Kratos, because they're, you know,
obviously the
older games,
the previous voice actor, nothing wrong with that one, but I just kind of assuming that got a little bit older and probably didn't want to do that.
Oh, no doubt. It's a different style.
It's a different Kratos, to be sure.
It's a different style Kratos. Christopher Judge.
He's famous for saying boy.
And it's just that game, everything about that game, like the upgrade system, the combat, it's nothing more satisfying. Like, you're in a big battle, right? Like, you've been fighting all these enemies and maybe a mini bosses in the stage, and you throw your axe and you're doing your thing, and then when the fight is over and you just call that shit back and then you catch it, so satisfying.
The Leviathan axe that your wife left for you has like a homing capability to it, where you can throw it out anywhere as far as you want, and you can always recall the axe to your hand.
Like Thor. Just think about Thor.
Like Mjolnir, specifically. That adds a whole new dimension to combat, because now Kratos has a ranged weapon on command. He can throw his axe at people, he can leave the axe in them and then punch people and then call the axe back at his command. Like I was talking about with Doom Eternal, where you have that flow state kind of combat where you just kind of hit the perfect timing of everything and you're right where you need to be when you want to be. God of War 2018 does that flawlessly.
Yes, it does. And what I like about the combat versus the other ones, like, they paid attention to detail. And what I mean by that, the Kratos in the previous games he was built, but he wasn't as big as he is in 2018. Like, he has the old man look now.
Yeah.
So in the previous ones, he had almost like free flowing combat. Like, he was doing things with the chains, and, you know, he could jump high. He did all that fancy shit. In this one,
he's methodical.
He's a grown man, and he doesn't jump unless necessary. Like, there's a little thing he has to hop over.
There's no flair to what he's doing. He's a machine.
Hard with an axe, and that's what he does. And that's what I love about it. That it's attention to detail.
Yep.
This team in Santa Monica Studios, they just did a great job of paying homage to the series that got them there,
but also doing something original,
in a new direction,
and not just a new direction, but continuing in a logical fashion from where they were. It's not just, this is a different Kratos. It's like, no, this is the product of everything that he's seen and everything that he wants to do.
It's so well done. And the axe, I remember you fight the very first, like, big, tall, like, ogre.
The ogre guy with the pillar.
Yes.
Yeah.
So you fight him, and nothing was more satisfying. It was just a cool moment when you throw the axe and you see the axe still in him, and you can still move around and it stays there. It's not like it disappears or anything. It stays there wherever you throw it. You could throw it and it goes off screen, but if you go towards that area, you'll see it in something.
Yep.
It
goes until it can't.
Yep. And you can call it back. Like, I remember sitting there for like 15 seconds waiting because I threw it and I wanted to see. I went whole nother section of like moved on. I just left it there. I want to see how long or see if it would come back, and it does. And it takes a while to get there. Like you're just standing there.
So my thing was throwing it off of Yggdrasil and angling it so it hit one of the lower roots.
Yeah.
And so it's like,
yep. So it's so great. It's so great. I love it. I absolutely love that game. It makes me want to play it again.
Same. Just talking about it makes me want to re-download it. So, important story beats. You run into a witch in the woods. Yep. She's like, hey, you shot my boar, you dumb idiot. Don't do that. And then she's like, here's the sigil to keep people from using scrying magic on you. And you're like, huh, that's weird. And then she like peed in it. So like, that's kind of cool. And then, let's see, from there you go and you're being tracked down by two morons. And you fight the two morons, and your son has a full breakdown. He rages out and stabs a guy, or tries to. I forget which one it is. He either kills a guy or he doesn't kill a guy.
He doesn't kill him.
He fucks a dude up, and he gets so mad that he collapses. He just goes full catatonic. And you bring him back to the witch, who you find out is Freya. Not at that point, I don't think. Not until later.
I think he knows. I think.
Oh yeah, he did. He says,
but he doesn't know. He doesn't know.
He doesn't know where she stands.
Yeah, what connection she has to other characters that.
But Kratos very specifically mistrusts gods because of everything that he's seen and done. So when he finds out that Freya was a goddess and had not disclosed that information, he completely distrusts her.
He was pissed too.
But when his son falls catatonic, he brings Atreus to her, and she's like, hey, did you just not tell him that he was a god, like, at all? And he was like, the boy does not need to know. And she's like, okay, it's really simple what's happening here. He's a god, and assumedly he's a god of whatever you are a god of, and he's not being allowed to manifest that, and that's gotta go somewhere.
And that's why he's
having these attacks, because he's a god of rage, because Kratos was like the god of war. So he's clearly trying to unleash his godhood, and it's being suppressed by the knowledge of his mortality as far as he understands it. So
where Freya lives is awesome too.
She lives underneath the shell of a gigantic tortoise.
It is a beautiful section of the game.
It is.
Like, it looks amazing. And when the sunlight hits, you know, if you have a TV or a monitor that can do HDR, if you like, it just looks so good.
It's beautiful. It's like a picturesque meadow, and it's got beautiful like low-hanging trees, and there's like
big ass turtle
there, and there's birds and elk and stuff all flying around. So Freya tells you that the only place you can go to find what you need to undo what has just happened is Helheim, which in Norse mythology, you've got all the different realms. Midgard is Earth. Helheim is hell. It's the afterlife, but the bad afterlife. It's where the souls of people who did not die in valorous combat go. You have Asgard, which is where the realm of the Asgardian gods. You've got Alfheim, which is where all the elves live. You've got Niflheim, which is where the mist lives. You've got Muspelheim, which is where Surtur lives. Surtur, who is the one who is foretold to bring Ragnarok. What am I missing? Probably a lot.
And then 9 of them.
Yeah, Jotunheim.
Yeah, you know all that.
Jotunheim, which is the realm of the giants. I don't remember which one where the Vanir live. It's not like Vanirheim, I don't think. Anyways, there's 9 realms. That's most of the ones that I remember off the top of my head. But it's important to know that they all exist in the same spot, but in different dimensions. So you could be in the same spot in a different realm, and you're technically in the same place. Kind of like a multiverse.
It is.
Of madness.
You just had to get that in there.
Drive that in there. So, basically she tells you the only way you can fix Atreus is by going in. Beautiful. Okay, so we've got Jotunheim, which is the realm of the giants, Asgard, the realm of the Asgardian gods, Alfheim, which is the realm of the elves, Vanaheim, which is the realm of the Vanir, Niflheim, which is where the mist lives, Midgard, which is Earth, Muspelheim, which is the Fire Realm where Surtur lives, Nidvillir, which I actually don't know what that is. Oh, where the dwarves live. Oh, Svartalfheim. That's what it's called in game, but it has different names. So yeah, Svartalfheim, which is the realm of the dwarves, and then Helheim, which is hell. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So yeah, you have to go to hell to help your son. And she's like, hey, that realm is a realm of biting cold, and your ice axe isn't going to do a fucking thing in there. And so Kratos looks at the camera and he goes, I guess it's Morbin time. And so
oh god. If he did that, I think I would take the disc out and break that shit.
It's Morbin time. So no, Kratos gets really quiet and he says, then I must find a different weapon. And so
oh my god,
there's an audio track that kicks in like the second that he says that.
Man.
And it's like this really like low dissonant chanting that just, it's so good. And then when you walk out, the sky is no longer sunny and bright. All of a sudden this weird like otherworldly storm starts kicking in and the sky turns like flashes of red and purple and there's lightning streaks. And so you get on this boat and you're going back towards your cabin.
That boat ride, y'all, when I was playing that shit, I'm sitting at the crib and I'm like, if he does this automatically goes all the way up to the top of the greatest game of all time. If he does what I think he's about to do, because they were setting it up. That boat, and he's talking to himself the whole time.
He's talking to himself, but then he's also talking to Athena.
Yes, he is.
So his representation of Athena shows up because he talks to himself a lot, and basically Athena shows up and she's like, you're just a monster. You're going to be the exact same person you were before. And he goes, you're right. I am a monster, but I'm not your monster anymore. And I was like, so even at the very beginning of the game, it was clear that Kratos had bandages on his forearms.
Mm-hmm.
And if you played God of War 1 through 3 and all the others, the blades of chaos are attached to him by chains that are strapped to his arms. That's where the chains of Olympus, that's where that title comes from. So he's had these bloody bandages around his forearms. Well, you go back to the house and the music starts pulling up and up and up and up and up. And it crescendos into like this almost deafening, like, dun, dun, dun. And you open up the door and you go down into that basement that you told Atreus to never go into. Oh my
God.
And he reaches down and he pulls out this package and he very, like, you can tell that he's afraid.
Yes.
Like the way that his like motion capture is done is masterful because he's hesitating and he never hesitates. Just slowly, and it's not reverence, it's fear. And he pulls back the edges of the thing, and there's the blades of chaos rusted and covered in blood. And he just sort of just braces himself, and then he takes the chains and he starts wrapping them around his arms.
One of the greatest gaming moments I have, like, up to that point in 2018. There are only maybe 2 games at that point that gave me that same feeling, and that was The Last of Us.
Yep.
And then God of War 2018. Those 2 games gave me all types of feelings. That moment was so special, and it was for everyone, but it specifically was for God of War fans who had played the previous games. It's like, here's something that you can enjoy too.
Even if you were coming in on 2018, you probably at least had like heard of the previous God of War, so you knew that, like, oh, he had some swords or whatever.
It's not this,
But if you played those games, you understand the significance of him putting those back on, because all he ever wanted was those off. So he puts the blades of chaos back on his own arms, of his own accord, his own choice, to save his son. You go outside and you fuck some shit up. You go into Helheim, you go in there, you fuck some shit up. You get the heart of the gate warden, you bring it back, you give it to your son wakes up. And Freya's like, hey, are you going to tell him about it? And he's like, shut up, whore. And he leaves with Atreus because he still doesn't want to tell his son that he's a god because he hates gods. He
hates them.
And it's very clear at this point that in a way, he really hates his son because he's like, I made another one.
Yep. There are moments though that he wants to comfort him, like and I love these.
They're so good.
They'll show Atreus being frustrated or upset, and then Kratos
would put his hand out to comfort him, and then like thinks twice,
and then he pulls it back. So many good moments in that damn game. So many good ones. Continue.
So Atreus is back up and ready. And then I don't know if it was before this or after this, but you go and you find out that, hey, we need to get Mimir, or rather you go up to the peak and you see that there's, you get to the highest point of the mountain and Mimir, who's trapped inside of the tree and being tortured every day forever, is like, oh, hey, bud. If you're trying to get to the highest peak, that's not it, bitch.
Yep.
The only place that has the highest peak is Jotunheim. And guess what? All the giants closed that shit off. You can't get in there anymore. And you're like, well, fuck. Well, how do I get there? And he's like, hey, get me out of this fucking tree and I'll show you. And you're like, shut up, bitch. And he's like, okay, but I would like to get out of the tree. And you're like, all right, how do I get you out? And he's like, I need you to chop off my head. And you're like,
wait, what?
What? He's like, yeah, just leave the body, take the head.
Take the head.
He's like, and then you're going to take me to this lady in the woods. So you go and you take Mimir's decapitated head.
You do cut his head.
Get him revived with Freya. And Freya spits in his face as soon as he gets revived. He's like, hey, what the fuck is that all about? And he's like, oh, it's a long story. Don't worry about it, bud. But yeah, so from then on, you have Mimir, which in Norse mythology, Mimir is the god of knowledge, basically. He was an aggregator of knowledge, and he was very good at interacting with people from all the different races and realms.
Yes, and he is an awesome, awesome character because he fills in a lot of the gaps. Because since this is an open world, it's I would consider it an open world game.
I would too. It's semi-open.
Yeah, you can. There are plot points that the game wants you to go through, but you can pretty much go anywhere on the map. Like once you get to the open areas, you can just take the boat and go pretty much anywhere you want to on the map. But during the boat rides, he will give you exposition about things in the, without having to go through the story beats. If you're just an explorer, he will fill in some of the gaps, and it's really cool.
What I love about it is, if you don't know anything about Norse mythology, the things that he's telling you are great because you're getting just a little bit of background information. You can even tune him out. You can tell him to shut up.
Yep,
you don't have to. You don't have to listen to it if you don't want to. If you know Norse mythology, the way he's telling the stories is really important because he's not portraying it from the view of the Asgardian gods being good guys, which is how Norse mythology is typically depicted, which becomes really important as it goes on when you find out that the people that are chasing you are the Asgardians. So Odin, seeing into the future, has seen that someone is going to try and kill him, and being the paranoid fuck that he is, he's like, I'm going to kill that kid.
Yep.
And you're like, what the fuck? That hasn't happened yet. And he's like, but I know it will happen.
Yeah. Yep.
So he sends Balder, who was the stranger that accosted you at your house, who is the immortal man. Balder is unable to be killed by normal means. He can revive himself indefinitely. Kind of a bad dude to be pursuing you.
Yep.
And then Thor's two shithead children, whose names I forget.
I forget too. Because there is a boss fight with those two, right? Yeah, that's the ones you fight in. Okay.
Yeah.
Cave.
But yeah, he's got two shithead kids. You kill one of them, and the other one's like, I'm telling Dad. And then they fuck off. Yeah. So once you find out that it's the Asgardians after you, it kind of puts a whole new pressure to you getting your objective done. Because as Mimir's telling you, the reason that Jotunheim is closed off is because of the Asgardians, because the Asgardians have been hunting the Jotuns down to death. The two children of Thor are Modi and Magni. And yeah, they're cucks. Nobody likes them.
They're terrible. It was fun fighting them though.
Oh, it was a good fight for sure. That little like back to back thing.
It
with the
reminds me
field.
of a. I know I don't play those games, but from what I've seen, like a Dark Souls type thing, because you have the two enemies,
different bosses,
and
very Ornstein and Smo
yes,
kind of vibes.
Yes,
yeah.
Because I've seen you fight those two dudes, and I'm like, fuck this game. Never playing Dark Souls or Bloodborne or Elden Ring or any of those. Anyway, continue.
So yeah, so once you find out it's the Asgardians after you, you've got all this new pressure. But basically, you travel to a bunch of different realms to find things that you need to get to Jotunheim, because Jotunheim, like Mimir told you, has been closed off. While you're going through there, Baldur continues to pursue you, and you can't kill him. You keep fighting him off, but he can't die.
It's like Mr. X.
Yes. Like a really scrawny Mr. X. Like if Mr. X was like a white trash meth head. Yeah, for sure. So at one point, Sindri, one of the two dwarven craftsmen, gets cornered by a dragon. And Atreus is like, we have to help him. And Atreus is like, no, we fucking don't, idiot. We don't have to do anything. And Atreus is like, no, Dad, come on. We got to like save Sindri. Crow's like, oh. So you go and you fight the dragon. You save Sindri's life. And by way of thanks, Sindri gives a bushel of mistletoe arrows to Atreus. While they are maneuvering and exploring, Atreus's quiver breaks. And seeing the fibrous nature of the mistletoe arrows, Kratos breaks off the head of one of the arrows and slips it through to patch his quiver. And he's like, that should hold. These look like magical arrows. This will be fine. When they go back to see Freya, she notices the mistletoe arrows and loses her fucking mind. Like, she's been very cool and friendly. Yeah. And she's like, give me those fucking arrows. And she like takes the arrows and throws them in the fire. Like, those are wicked, evil, bad things. And you should never have had them. And you're like, well, okay, fuck it. Like, and she's like, if you find any more, you bring them to me and I'll destroy them. And you're like, okay, I guess.
Hey.
So with all of that, comes to a final confrontation where you get to the top of the mountain. Baldur is after you again, and you end up breaking the portal to Jotunheim in the course of the fight. Atreus shoots you because he found out that he was a god, and he didn't take it very well. He basically went through the worst vices of all of the Greek gods at the same time, where he was like, I'm a god, I can do whatever I want. You're a dumb bitch, Dad, and I hate you. And then the two brothers, the two craftsmen, are arguing, and he comes up and he has one of the most crushing monologues I've ever heard any video game character give any other video game character, where he's like, you two are small people with small problems, and nothing you do matters to us because we are on the business of gods. And Sindri's just like, again, wonderful motion capture performance, wonderful like voice acting. You can tell he is devastated, by this once sweet child cutting him down. Turns out that's kind of what he needed, because the two brothers end up reconciling over that event, and are just like, hey, like, you know, we were kind of making this much bigger problem than it needed to be. And so they team up. They help you make your best possible weapons. Having no other alternative, you and Mimir access the secret temple of Tyr. Tyr is the god of justice, who famously sacrificed his hand to be bitten off by Fenris, or Fenrir, depending on which interpretation you have, to save Odin's life. So he's the one-handed god of justice. And he was a good guy by all accounts. And in this telling of the story, he's friends with the giants, he's friends with the elves, he's befriended he can speak every language. He's just friend to all. So he has a secret portal that can access Jotunheim if they have the eyes of the giants. Mimir has one, his other one got stolen. So that's when you run into Jormungandr. Now, you ran into Jormungandr in the very beginning. Like the second you came out, you ran into Jormungandr. but it's a very cryptic interaction. You're just told to throw your axe into the water, and then Jormungandr comes back up. He's like, "Hey, bitch, why'd you throw shit into my lake?" And Jormungandr is the world serpent. He is beyond comprehension in size.
And it was so awesome to see it. Like,
they did a perfect job, one, giving him the correct scale, and two, the fucking sounds he makes.
Yes.
The sound design on Jormungandr speaking giant.
It's so great.
It's because it's like it's comprehensible. Like you can hear, like it's clearly a language, but it's so deep and bassy. Like, it's beautiful. So anyways, that first interaction with Jormungandr didn't really give you a whole much. And for the rest of the game, Jormungandr's just kind of like keeping an eye on you. But there's a really important line that Jormungandr says the first time that you meet him. And Atreus is interpreting for you. Because Atreus can apparently speak every language. That's a thing that he just has innately as part of being a god. And Jormungandr says that Atreus specifically smells very familiar to him. And that is because, jumping very ahead in story stuff here, skipping a lot of other stuff, it is revealed that Atreus has a giant name because Faye was one of the last of the giants. So Atreus is half god, half giant. And the name that he was given by the giants in prophecy is Loki, which was a mind-blowing reveal. I did not see that coming.
All the stuff on the wall, like
the murals and everything.
Whole scene.
So
it was so well
specifically
done.
When they pour the ashes out and you see all the dead giants out there. Because I missed that on my first playthrough. I was like, oh, it's just like a wasteland. And the second playthrough on the PC, I was like, oh my God, like this place is a fucking graveyard. It was wild. Anyways, so Atreus is Loki, and which is why Odin wants to kill him, because in prophecy, Loki precipitates Ragnarok through some of his actions. He starts the Fimbulwinter, which is referenced in this game. Fimbulwinter begins, and it's considered to be the last and longest winter. Why that's important is because canonically, Loki is the father of Jormungandr. Jormungandr is Loki's kid. There's a weird interpretation here, but basically, when Ragnarok happens, Jormungandr consumes itself Ouroboros style and is cast to another point in time.
Now, does Taika Waititi come in and make it a comedy?
He should have.
Because
he should have.
That's pretty much what. Okay, I'm just making sure. I don't know if Taika just comes in and says, "Hey guys,
hey guys, I'm a rock.
I'm Korg, and this is my friend Meek." Anyway, continue.
So, when Jormungandr consumes himself, he is cast into time and space in this interpretation. So, Loki fucks and then creates this gigantic serpent. And then that serpent then aids Loki on his quest before he even becomes Loki, which is Norse mythology in a nutshell.
Yes.
There's a lot of weird shit going on, is
That's
what it boils
awesome.
down to. Yeah, I love it because it's chaotic and insane.
That's awesome.
I'm trying to think. What are the? Oh yeah, Balder dies. That's kind of important.
That scene, that fight, was so dope.
The father-son special at the very end, it's really well done.
Damn.
So throughout the whole game, Atreus doesn't fight specifically, but he can shoot arrows at the things that you're targeting.
Which is an awesome mechanic.
Yes.
Because instead of it being a long-ass escort mission, they make Atreus, like, he does his own thing.
Yeah.
And you call him by pressing a button, and he shoots the arrows that you have selected.
Yes.
Beautiful mechanic, because you don't have to worry about him.
You don't.
You could fight whatever, and Atreus will stay alive unless the story needs something to happen to
Correct.
him.
It's only in specific story beats that something bad happens.
And I love it.
Effectively, you come into a final confrontation with Balder. Balder steals Atreus, escapes on his dragon, goes into Helheim. You go through Helheim again, and while on the boat, you are confronted by the ghost of Zeus, who is echoing back through time.
God, it's so good.
One of the big themes that's been going on throughout the entire story is children rebelling against their parents and sometimes killing them. There's a very specific storyline where there's a pirate captain or a bandit captain whose son kills him.
That's one of the ghosts.
Yeah, it's one of the ghost ones.
Yep. Okay. Yep.
So you come across a specter who is like, hey, my shit ass son killed me. And you go find him and take revenge. And then you go find his son, and his son is dead, killed by his own crewman, but he went down fighting. And so you take that knowledge back to the dad, and he's like, he was a son of a bitch, but like, I'm glad he's in Valhalla. And it's like, oh, like there's multiple dimensions. This is not just like there's good guys and bad guys. So long story short, Atreus finds out that his dad killed his own dad.
Yep.
And Atreus is already feeling a little bit rebellious. So I'm curious to see when he kills Kratos, because I'm sure that's going to happen.
I'm pretty sure. Well, I'm pretty sure there's going to be a battle of some sort.
Oh, yeah.
I want to be Kratos, though. Like, I don't want to.
No. Well, actually, what they're going to do is they're going to freeze frame, and then you're going back 4 days before that fight, and you're going to play as Atreus leading up to that fight, and then you're going to have to kill Kratos as Atreus.
But then they're going to take, what they're going to do is they're going to freeze frame. Mm-hmm. They're going to put Abby in there. You're going to play as Abby.
Correct. Yeah.
And then you're going to kill Kratos as Abby.
Correct.
So she's going to kill two heroes that you've been through a lot of shit with.
Yeah.
There we go.
Yeah.
So Abby is just the game killer. Like,
correct. She's
going to be in the next Sonic the Hedgehog. She's going to kill Sonic.
Any Sony property that needs its protagonist killed off, she is just summoned automatically.
She's going to be in the next Final Fantasy.
Yes.
You can summon Abby to kill like the most powerful boss because, it's Abby.
That's what she does. Fucking bitch. But yeah, so it comes to a point where you have this confrontation with Baldur, and in the course of fighting with Baldur, he punches Atreus in the chest and gets pierced through the hand by this mistletoe arrow. And the reason you find out that Freya was freaking out is because she made it so he only had one weakness and then cursed the world to forget what that weakness was. She was the only person who knew what the weakness was, and by pure fate and prophecy and happenstance, you happen to have the one thing that can turn him mortal. And he's very grateful for it because he's like, I can finally feel pain.
Yeah.
This fucking rocks. And then you beat the piss out of him.
Living piss.
And you say, hey, this all ends here. The beef is squashed. You're immortal now. You can die. You're not really immortal, but you can die. Don't kill your mom like you've been saying you're going to do this whole time, because he hates Freya for having cursed him with immortality. He's like, hey, fucking behave. And then you take Atreus and you go to leave, and Baldur gets up and he goes over to start strangling Freya to death.
Yeah.
And Kratos, like with the most world-weary body language you've ever seen, he just very calmly goes up behind Baldur and he says, the cycle ends here. And he snaps Baldur's neck for the last time.
Yep.
Freya flies into a rage and begins screaming oaths of vengeance, how she will rain down hell and fury upon them both. They will never know a day's peace. They will never know the comfort of shade for the threat that will always loom over their heads.
And the acting was so good.
So good.
So good, man.
Freya has seemed pretty benign. Like, she didn't have all that much of an impressive power for the most part of the game, until you go through and you kill all the Valkyries. And at the very end, when you've killed all the Valkyries, you're like, oh, well, that was the queen of the Valkyries. And Mimir goes, buddy, no, Freya's the queen of the Valkyries. She just gave up her wings because that's what the condition of her marrying Odin was. And you're like, wait. So I didn't just make like a forest witch mad. I made the god of the Valkyries mad.
And it was a bitch killing them Valkyries. Even the number 8, I think it was 8 of them, right? Was it 8?
Yeah, I think there's 8, and then the 9th one is the queen.
Yes. Okay. So you kill all those shits and you struggle through. It's not an easy go.
Yeah. There's like maybe 2 Valkyries that are easier, but they're all tough fights.
Like,
they have a lot of hit points.
You struggle through some of them shits, and the final one you had to play through a lot,
multiple times. And even going back and playing it through in 2018, where I knew all the gear I needed to have, I had my whole game plan. It still took me like an hour and a half, I think, to kill her.
Them bitches,
but,
man.
The final Valkyrie, once you've killed all the different Valkyries, each Valkyrie has like a specific set of moves that she can do, and some Valkyries have similar moves.
Yep.
But different timings and different effects. The Queen of the Valkyries combines everybody's moveset. So you have to remember how you killed all the other ones and then put all of that together at the same time without getting your shit pushed in, which is hard because she hits really fucking hard.
And speaking of that, another cool thing, we're going to continue the story, but another cool thing is when he mentioned earlier about the dragons, there are multiple dragons that you can face in the game. And those things are fun. Yeah, it's a couple of little extra ones. It's like extra ones on there.
You don't fight the dragons, you release the dragons.
You have to fight them.
No?
I fought them. Because you don't just like release them. You actually have to fight them and then you can release them. And it's like enemies there in the area too, because I fought the dude in
you just break the stones and they go.
I remember fighting them.
They try and attack you.
Yeah.
But you
can attack them too. You can throw your axe and all that shit at them.
I never tried that.
Yeah.
I just avoided them. I was like, I'm letting the dragons go.
You can fight them. You can throw your axe. It hits them. You call it back. They take damage. They will fight you. And then when you go away, they go back to normal. Like they go back to standard. Try it.
I'm going to have to go back and play it again.
Dude, I used to fight them all the time. And I used to, they can kill you. Like they can kill you. So I'm like, am I supposed to battle these things? Because it doesn't seem like, they don't have like necessarily an HP bar, but they take damage and you can die from them because when they blow the fire at you, they will kill you.
Fucking hell.
Yeah, you're supposed to just release them, but you can fuck around and get your shit pushed in by one of the dragons.
Huh.
Yeah. Go try it. Next time you play it, just go up to the area that they are. Don't hit anything and just start throwing the axe, or if you have the chains at that time, you can use the chains. Yes, you can battle with them. You can't really do it because the story doesn't want you. The story wants you to release them versus kill them. But yeah, you could have a little battle with the dragons.
Huh.
And you can have Atreus shoot the arrows at them and everything.
Damn. That's a whole mechanic I just missed.
I thought that's what you were supposed to do. I didn't realize you were supposed to release them. So I sat there forever just fighting them. And then enemies started coming out too, because the enemies know that you're there in the little pit. So they started fighting you. I'm like, I need to kill this thing. So I'm trying to kill them. They're trying to kill me. And it's just chaos.
Jesus.
It's fun.
Huh.
Go try that shit.
I'm going to have to.
You can't really do anything, but
just
they fight you back. That's blow fire and shit at you.
Yeah.
It's really cool. I can't believe you didn't try that. Well, no. I guess if you knew that you're supposed to free them.
Yeah.
Unlike I did. I didn't know you were supposed to free them because I just stumbled upon them.
The quest marker said to free them, so I did. I whatever they have written up in the top left is whatever I do.
Well, see, when I was going through on the boat, you just go to an area, like,
Yeah, and then
you go to an area and then you don't know what the fuck to do because you don't go to it on the map. You just circle around and find it. And the next thing you know, I'm like, it's a dragon? First instinct, smoke him. But then you're like,
fuck the dragon up.
It's not really doing anything. And then he can fight me and then there are enemies there. And then I realized later on, after I left the area, I was like, oh shit, I'm supposed to free these things? Then I went back and freed them.
So you kill Balder. Freya swears vengeance. You find out that she's the Queen of the Valkyries. And then you finally get to go to Jotunheim and spread the ashes like you meant to do 1,000 years ago. And you go through, and as you're going through, you see these ancient giant temples. And you're revealing wall paintings and sculptures. Yeah. And they are cataloging the entire journey that you have had up to that point with incredibly specific detail. It's not like something they could have guessed. It's like
so nice.
The path that you're on is one of prophecy. And then as you both walk towards the outer area where you can drop the ashes, a tapestry falls and you see the image of Loki killing Kratos. That
also is the same area too where you see some of Kratos' past.
Correct.
And he kind of doesn't want Atreus to see it. But we see it, and you see the same imagery that they used from the artwork from the first few God of War games on those pots. Like it's on.
That's actually not in there. That's in Tyr's temple.
Okay, so that's
Tyr's temple. Where we've got the ceramic, and then he punches the pot.
He gets pissed. He's like, oh shit, I can't let anybody see this. So he destroys the pot. Yeah.
He got it. Good boy.
Yeah.
Yeah. The game ends with you spreading phage ashes into the land of Jotunheim. Finally, you see that all the other giants are dead. And then you say, let's go home. And then you sleep, and a couple years pass while you're sleeping.
Man.
And you wake up, and there's a fat turd at the door. And he moves his cape to the side, and you see Mjolnir hanging at his side. And you're like, oh, fuck. Thor's here. And then the game ends.
Yep, it ends.
And I was like, fuck me. We're getting along in the tooth. But the last thing I want to do is take a look at the Ragnarok trailer, because I have not seen the trailer for the second game. It's supposed to release this year.
Speculation that it's going to release in November of this year, but it could be delayed until 2023.
So I'm going to give this a looky-loo. Actually, I'm watching this trailer fresh from the beginning with no interruptions. Nothing happened. Looks really good.
It looks so good. And this is a compressed trailer that I got. Older, looks older, a little bit taller.
It's running out. The prophecies say Fimbulwinter leads to Ragnarok. War is coming. My story doesn't end hiding in these woods. I should be out there, finding out who I am, who Loki is.
I will not allow you to pick a fight with gods.
I don't want to fight anyone. I just want answers.
And if those answers lead to war with Asgard,
maybe that's what Mother wanted.
we do not know what Mother wanted.
Well, I recognize that dour expression anywhere. Odin's got tricks up his sleeve we haven't dared to consider.
What if there was someone who could help us?
You mean Tyr, the old god of war in these lands, who is dead?
Well, for a dead man, Odin seemed pretty keen on seeing he wasn't found.
If he's out there, we gotta
This must
find
be
him.
Come in.
yeah, it's the Dwarven land.
Be the happened to him.
We're trying to stop Ragnarok, to help
Svartalfheim.
people. And what if the only way to do that is war?
War is not the only way.
So good.
Stop thinking like a father for a moment and start thinking like a general.
You seem like a calm and reasonable person.
That boy, the beast.
And reasonable person.
Yeah.
In moments of crisis, panic does nothing. Harness it. Let it serve you.
Here.
Are you coming with us?
You'll get your answers soon enough. Well, some of them.
They were inspired by the Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
That's rad. That I don't. If they keep with the general premise of just following Norse mythology in the same way that they have been, I don't think they can fuck that up. Now, having said that, this next thing's gonna be dog shit because it's something that I like.
Man,
That's sick.
yes. Like, the gameplay looks more of the same, but they look like they added a few little extra things that he can do with the chains. Like, this.
It looks like there's just enough different there to keep you coming back. will say I am disappointed by one thing and one thing mainly.
What's that?
Doesn't look like he gets any new weapons.
Yes, but you remember when we saw the trailer for the first game, you didn't know he was going to get the chains at all. They only showed the axe.
True.
So,
well, you know what he doesn't.
You never know.
You know what he doesn't have is a sword.
He doesn't.
You know
have
who
a sword.
does have a sword?
Who has a sword?
Freya.
Yeah, she. Yeah, in the trailer, she.
I think we're gonna. Just gonna.
So, you will have different shields this time. From what I was reading,
I hope so, because you had different shields in the first one, but they didn't do anything different.
This one,
purely
each
cosmetic.
one has different attributes.
Oh,
so it looks like they're gonna add different shields for different attributes.
So it looks like they're gonna go the route of Sekiro and have different prosthetics that you can equip.
I don't think it's.
I think it's probably gonna be closer to Devil May Cry 5 with those prosthetics.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
that seems pretty likely.
Yep. So that seems. So do you get the same excitement from that trailer? Like seeing that
Absolutely.
trailer, do you? Okay.
Yeah, because I think it's gonna have the right story beats at the right time. I think Atreus is gonna be somehow more annoying in this one.
Yeah.
Because he's gonna be like, fuck you, Dad.
It's the teenage angst that's popping out, man. It's the teenage angst.
But Tyr looks pretty cool. Tyr looks like he might be kind of a Chad. And I noticed he still has both hands, which is gonna be a problem because that means he's got to lose one of those.
Yeah.
I didn't see Fenrir either, which I was kind of expecting. Didn't see Surtur or Fenrir or the two other wolves.
Well, I'm assuming they will release more trailers as time goes on.
Probably, but I won't watch any of it.
That's fair.
I got what I needed.
That's fair.
This game has black people in it. In my Norse mythology.
You know that's gonna be, somebody's gonna say something.
I'm sure someone's gonna be upset about that. It was just like the first Thor movie.
Yeah.
Idris Elba is Heimdall. This is the worst fucking thing that's ever happened ever. And then it was like, oh, he's just a guy. It's okay.
And they were actually, those same people were actually sad when he died in Infinity War.
Yep.
They were like, shit, I actually kind of liked him. Oh, well.
Yeah, well.
So, I think it's going to be great. And I'm excited to play it. And, the one negative thing that I have about it is the fact that it is PS4 and PS5.
That is bad.
So that means they can't take full advantage
of the PS5's hardware.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that is the one pitfall that I have. But
flip side of that is it looks like it was developed for the PS4.
Yeah. And probably upscaled to PS5. But that hurts. I mean, not saying that I know not everybody has a PS5 yet, which is I barely got one.
Well, the only people that don't have them are the poors, and we don't respect them.
I barely got my PS5 and I got it this year. So I had a whole year of not having one. So I understand
what it's like to be one of the poor.
Yeah, and I understand why they're putting it on both systems because they want to sell as many copies as possible.
True.
One thing that I hope they do is have the PS4 version and you have the free upgrade to the PS5 version. They've been doing that with some games, not all games, but they've been doing that with some games. So I hope they have that conversion because I just upgraded my RE2, 3, and 7 to the PS5 upgrades. So hopefully they do that. I hope they do that.
Hey, did you know there's a Resident Evil 4 remake coming out? Did you know? Did you know about it?
So,
have you heard?
All in all, people, we love God of War from the beginning all the way to 2018.
That's not true.
You like them.
You like God of War from the beginning to the end.
No, you like because you went through all the story, all that stuff. The only thing you didn't do was actually physically play through it, but you know all of it. So you like it too.
You know what? I do. I do like God of War start to finish. Because they let me see boobies, and that's my only metric for a good game. And that's why you should not play God of War 2018. Because there are zero fucking boobies.
No boobies in it. No boobies. This is a storied franchise that Sony has. Like, you know, you have your Uncharted's, you have your Ratchet and Clanks, you have God of War, you have, let's see, what's another good Sony franchise?
Crash Bandicoot.
But he's not even, he's multi-platform now.
Oh, gross.
Yeah, he's multi-plat.
Ghost of Tsushima.
Yes. As a matter of fact, I just started that. I just
what do you
started
think?
it. I'm like 5 or 6 hours into it. So I'm like not even scratching the surface. But
Seems like it'd be a good time.
you're going to love it.
I think I am.
So, yes. So I guess that's...
Play God of War.
Yep.
Boobies in video games are cool.
Yep.
But it's very impressive to see, in all seriousness, a gaming franchise that has moved into the modern era, evading some of the pitfalls of its previous iterations that in the current day and age would be a massive detractor, and still managed to meaningfully push the envelope of what their genre and their story is.
Yes. I couldn't have said it better myself. It's one of my favorites all the way around. It's one of the reasons why I enjoy PlayStation so much. Like, I play both systems and I love my Gears of War, but it's nothing like Uncharted, God of War, Ratchet and Clank. Like, there's so many good series on PlayStation.
Metal Gear Solid.
Yes.
Originally.
You
was
love some Metal Gear Solid.
so much.
Love some Metal Gear Solid.
They only went multi-platform in the later years, in the twilight. Anyways, we've gotten pretty long here. This might have even been longer than the Elden Ring episode, which is fucking impressive, because I did not shut the fuck up about that game. But yeah, thanks for listening.
Yeah.
I hope that the new God of War is good, and once we're done playing it in 10 months or so, then we'll come back and we'll let you know how it was.
Yep.
And then if it was bad, we'll come back and we'll edit this version, and we'll say that we knew it was dog shit from the beginning, so that we can take clout as being right about everything.
I'll make sure I'm wearing the same shirt so you can't tell that anything changed.
God of War Ragnarok's going to be very bad. Anyways, thank y'all so much. We will see you next time.
All right. Peace.